I would love to tell you a little bit about our story of how we ended up here, Esther, and
I would
and
love that.
and talk a little bit about how we see the journey of aging from our own lived experience, but also from the eyes of our customers. And I think it's a conversation that doesn't seem to happen enough. And it feels like we almost need to give people permission to talk about it. And so I would, if you're okay with it, I would love to do that. And we could just banter a bit.
I would love it. Absolutely. I mean, the whole point of any podcast or YouTube video is education, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
Um, should we just dive in?
Dive in. Well, first start off by saying who you are and
Sure.
all of that fun little stuff.
Got it. Well, my name is Kabir Bhatia. I am the co-founder and CEO of Hello Every Day. We are a young startup based in Oregon. For your listeners, we're actually based in Lake Oswego, Oregon, which I think is one of the most beautiful places in the world.
It
Uh,
is.
we, thank you. There are three of us. So it's Dr. Mark Levitt and Dr. Huang Don and I that got together. We incorporated the company back in October. And then we brought our first device to market in May of this year, so 2025. And as of this past weekend, we have 140 sensors installed in different people's homes, and people
Wow.
are aging with this. We have over 1,000 people receiving messages from our devices, etc. So it's been a wonderful journey of impact. We are very mission oriented. We strongly believe that older adults should have the opportunity to age in place and do so with confidence. And I came at this journey, uh, as most people do in their lives, through lived experience. My parents moved to Lake Oswego in 2019. My in-laws have lived in Lake Oswego since the 1980s, and so we have a little community here. And my dad was diagnosed with cancer in 2020.
Mhm.
He battled it multiple times, and he passed away a couple of years ago. And I watched my mom try to figure out her life living by herself for the first time in her life. And I realized that there just aren't a lot of tools for older adults to stay connected with their people, even though they can be just a mile away or a couple of miles away. It was fascinating watching my dad operate one of these because I could tell if he was feeling better, he could swipe the phone or he could send a text message. But for most older adults that have, whether it's arthritis or whether their hands are shaking or they have tremors, etc., navigating some of the technology that we take for granted is some of the hardest things, and it makes them feel very little and makes them feel like they're being a burden if they have to ask for help. And so their world shrinks a lot. And it made me realize that we really need to do something to help older adults age with dignity and with confidence. And I was fortunate to meet my co-founders, and we came up with this little device. So this is our Hello Everyday sensor. It's a human presence sensor. You plug it in. I plugged it in just a few minutes ago. And that's all there is to set up. There are no buttons on this device. There's nothing for you to do. It just sits on a kitchen counter or gets plugged into an outlet. And all you do is it looks for human presence and it communicates that to up to five people using a daily text. No cameras, no microphones. So that is what we do, Esther. And we're very passionate about it. And some of the really interesting stories that have come out of this have made us realize just how important this opportunity is, but also just how complex it is. And that's what I actually want to talk about. Our realization is at a very basic level, we seem to prioritize safety over autonomy, over sort of the needs of dignity, etc., in our society, especially as it relates to older adults. And that has a very important negative connotation because for many people, that conversation just stops. If all you're doing is checking up on me, but you're not actually engaging with me, nobody wants to do that. And so it causes a lot of tension in people's lives. It causes a lot of tension in relationships. And I am on a mission to continue to tell people that it's important for everybody to consider that autonomy is always on the top priority, even if it's
Mm.
at the expense to some extent on safety, because we all deserve to make our own decisions as long as we can,
Right.
even if we feel uncomfortable about it. And the uh, it's a constant battle that we have where we're trying to make everyone around us, the people we love, as safe as possible, but sometimes to our own detriment.
I understand. It's hard, difficult for me as an OT. I mean, safety is the thing that gives you the autonomy, the independence. But I also agree with you that when you do begin the conversation with safety, that everything does shut down because then
Yeah.
they immediately start thinking, I'm too old, I'm being taken care of, I have all this hospital equipment, whatever, whatever, whatever. So I do agree with you that the emphasis should be on independence, on
Yep.
autonomy, and then safety is secondary. Okay, now how do we ensure, or what can we do to our best ability to ensure that autonomy um, and independence? So yeah, I can understand your point, and I agree with it.
Well,
Very right.
it's such an interesting counterpoint. I'm glad I'm speaking with an occupational therapist to keep me in check. Um, but I think it's nuanced. And it's nuanced because when we're dealing with whether it's our parents or whether it's people in our lives that are aging, they've led a full life. They
Right.
have they've gone through their ups and downs. They've navigated through hardships. They've often raised kids and and figured out how to problem solve all their lives. And
Hmm.
so suddenly when they reach a point in their lives where somebody else is telling them what they can or can't do,
Right.
it can be jarring.
It's
And it
true.
can and how dare they tell me what I can or can't do? And that's where the breakdown in that communication happens,
You're
right?
right.
And that's really what we are trying to change. Um, there's a very interesting equation. I'm an engineer, so I think about it in terms of equations. But there was a very interesting equation that I found online that I have adopted, which says a healthy relationship needs to have 5 positive interactions for every 1 negative interaction. So
Wow.
as you're thinking about interacting with people in
Yeah.
your, if all you're doing is checking up on mom and that's causing an annoyance factor, well, that's becoming a negative interaction. So where are the positive interactions, right? And it has to be both ways. And one of the realizations that we have had with the impact of Hello Every Day on people's lives is the fact that it lowers the stress value from the relationship because the people are already getting notifications that their older adult is doing fine and they're moving around as they normally should. And so it reduces the anxiety that comes from constantly worrying about something or someone. And now you're actually able to engage as people rather than as a patient and a caregiver,
True.
as as someone who is a source of worry and the worrier. And I think that is one of the biggest benefits. And so most of the time, our devices are most useful when there is anxiety or worry in the equation, and we are alleviating that. So we call it giving the gift of reassurance. But I
I love it.
as much as our medical establishment would like us to keep us safe, and keep us doing okay, if you don't have the purpose or you don't have the actual willingness uh, to embrace life, the safety doesn't really do much. That's there's no magic there anymore, and I think that's what we're trying to alleviate. And most of our, it's funny when I start this conversation with people that have parents that are aging, etc., their first inclination is thinking about the worst case scenario. Like, well, but how will I know when they fall? And
Yeah.
how will I know when when something goes wrong? And I'm like, I get that you want to know that, but I think you also want to know every day that they're doing okay.
Yeah.
That let's start there first, and then let's see if we can get the permission to have them give us access to getting the alerts if they do have a fall, etc. And I think that's um, it feels like a really it feels like to me a very obvious twist,
Hmm.
uh, because if people aren't willing to let you into their lives, you're not going to hear about anything anyway. Uh,
Yeah. I mean, focusing on the independence and building that not communication, but that relationship.
yeah,
Really, even if, even if it's obviously child and parent, you are really feeding that trust
yeah.
issue. And then as the more that you feed that, then the easier any other conversations come, which are difficult conversations. I mean, you're talking about everything from, possibly downsizing or, moving to some community, even talking about death, how do you manage funerals, DNR? I mean, all of those issues that are so important to talk about with aging parents, but most of us don't because they are difficult conversations. But having that kind of relationship with your parent, building that via, like you're saying, I love that. I think the boxes should come with the gift of reassurance printed on it
I
with a
I
little
I,
bow.
I love that. You said a bunch of things that I wanna talk a little bit about, which was trust, right? So
Mhm.
trust is such an important aspect.
Yeah.
When I talk to people who are interested in getting a device for their parent or for their older adult, I start with, well, what kind of a relationship do you have with your older adult? And I ask them, well, are you the decision maker for them? Like, have they given you that access to make decisions on their behalf?
Yeah.
Or are you a consultant?
Yeah.
And if you're a consultant or a decision maker, you have a lot of trust in that relationship, right? They're going to go with what you suggest, and it's going to be a very easy conversation, and things are going to go great. But if you are an influencer or if you are distant, that's when things start to break down, because that's when people are usually concerned about, well, what's in it? Like, why are you wanting to do this? Are you going to use this information against me? Are you going to, is this a ploy of some sort? There's skepticism. And I think it's important to understand how the what is the nature of that relationship, and how much goodwill have you banked so you can actually have this kind of an interaction. And I think and one of the things that I have also realized is I'm not always the right person to convince somebody. Sometimes it's someone else, right?
True.
Sometimes it's a peer. Sometimes it's my spouse who can convince, because they don't have um a lot of the social baggage that has come with sort of being the one that has always been, mom, you should do this, or mom, you should do that. So,
Right.
but so much of this is part of that journey of treating people like real people who have their own minds that need to be convinced. And we often go to people's homes. So when we first launched this company, Esther, I installed probably 40 or 50 of these devices myself. So I went out to people's homes, talked to them, and talked to them about sort of what we were doing. And the stories were remarkable because oftentimes our the user who was getting this device would show me or point to the drawer of devices that their well-intended kids had bought for them that they no longer use because it is it's too cumbersome. It
Yeah.
requires charging.
Yeah.
It is too invasive. They don't like wearing it. It's all of those, right? And we were very cognizant that we have to make anything that is going to be used by older adults to be as intuitive and single purpose as possible.
Yep.
And so when I talk to my peers, they always are thinking about what else can you do with this device? And we're like, no, you're going in the wrong direction. You want this to be a single purpose device and you want it to operate as if there is no manual, that they should be able to do this on their own. And that's the only way to get buy-in, because otherwise you're never going to get invited in. And so this is part of the conundrum of technology for when you're dealing with multi-generations, because what works for one generation often doesn't work for others.
Correct.
Uh, and so that's why it's such an interesting and challenging environment to sort of think about this. I was chatting with a friend of mine who happens to be in the she serves older adults. She works for an organization that serves older adults, and she took a device from us. She was like, I think this would be great for my mom, and I think I would love to have this for my mom. And then I got a message from her a couple of weeks ago saying, "Oh, I still haven't been able to install the device." And so I saw her at an event this past week, and I said, "Well, what's going on?" And she said, "Well, my mom and I had a big fight, and she just rejected anything that I said to her, and so this device is part of that." And I said, "Well, that's okay. Like, it should be the right thing at the right time. Do you want to give the device back?" She's like, "No, I think she's going to calm down, and I think it's going to be really important for our relationship." So I suggested, well, plug in the device in your own home and have her get the messages so that she sees that you're willing to be the person that is actually having the sensor. And and that was just she was completely taken aback. But that's what she's trying right now to see if that is we have to be able to um taste our own cooking, right? And so
That's
unless
true.
you're willing to do this, you can't expect others to do it. And so this is a big part of sort of the journey that we're going through together.
I
Um,
love that idea of even, even presenting it to future families. If you walk in and there's an older mother or father and then the adult child, if you see resistance from the older adult, I love that suggestion. Well, let's put it in both homes, or let's
yeah,
put it in her home and then you guys can see, I love that idea because then they can see what it really is.
right.
I
It
think
demystifies.
Right. I think that sometimes the concept of trying to understand it. I was just talking to someone this morning about how, as an OT, one of the things you test is how does this person learn? Is it auditory? Is it visual? Is it other sensory? Is it reading? What is it? And once you can identify that, then comes the treatment plan and, the re-education of whatever, has to be done. But that's basically what you're doing there. You're educating that person, via all the senses of how that particular product works. That's excellent. That's brilliant. Very good. I love that. That could be a
It's
whole seminar unto itself.
can be. It is, I think when you're, so if you think about technology today, most technology is for the user of the technology. So this phone is for my convenience,
Hmm.
right? And it is for me to do with whatever I want to do. I can silence it when I want to. I can get the notifications when I want to, etc. But our device really requires a partnership. It requires the person who is willing to give people access to their information,
Hmm.
their movements, etc.
Hmm.
And then there is the person who cares, who is
Hmm.
invested in sort of knowing that our person is doing okay. And that is really the key here. And it's almost like a telephone, right? You need two to actually work. But it requires a pact between the two individuals. Otherwise, it doesn't really work. But I think from a aging perspective, um, one of the pieces that has been really valuable in thinking about, especially as you're thinking about older adults, is this sense of community, is this sense of keeping people connected. We have we've gone down the path as a society to think that AI or technology can take care of everything. But we are social animals.
Yeah.
We like interaction. We like to see not only the person, no, we not only like to perform, but we want to see the reaction on people's
Yeah.
faces when we say something, and we want to feel seen. That's how we measure whether we're feeling seen or not, is whether people remember our names or we look for those cues. And I think that is what this is really powerful for, is basically making people feel seen. So I remember when my mom was our first tester for this device, when we were beta testing this. And at one point, we had to take the device back from my mom because we were going to upgrade it. And I remember my mom getting very concerned. She's like, "What do you mean you're going to take the device back?" I was like, "Well, it's a test device, right? Like we're testing this and we need to upgrade it." She's like, "Yes, but my brother gets a message from the device and her sister gets a message from the device." And she's like, "But they're not going to get those messages." I'm like, "I get it. It's only going to be a few days." But we become used to the idea of getting inserted into each other's lives,
Right.
and people miss that. And I think we're trying that is the core thesis of how do we build that community, either between people that are multi-generational or peer-to-peer. And that's also where the genesis of this device is actually with the village to village movement. I'm not sure, Esther, if you're familiar with them, but
I am. I love that movement. I love that
the
whole organization. Yeah.
So Dr. Mark Levitt, who's my co-founder, was a volunteer with the Village to Village chapter here in Lake Oswego. It's called Willow. It's West Lynn, Lake Oswego, the two sister cities that are next to each other. And um, one of their he was serving as an IT support, so he would help older adults with they had email issues or computer issues, etc. He would go in and help. And one of their members, who was otherwise very active, and seemed like a really integral part of the village, had an unexpected medical event and
Hmm.
collapsed on the floor of her house, and wasn't found for a number of days. And it just for your listeners who are not familiar with Village to Village, this is for older adults aging in their own homes that want a social or have needs where it's a peer-to-peer support. So folks that can help folks that can't. So if you
Hmm.
can drive, then you're giving rides to people that can't drive. or you're giving volunteering to do their yard work, etc. And so the fact that this member passed away unexpectedly was a major source of uh, just disturbance for the village members. And Mark, being the person that he is, decided he was going to do something about it. And so he went back in his career and he used to actually design radar for the defense industry before he became a physician. And he decided, well, I think I could come up with a device that would look for human presence. And so he developed this device and he started installing it for anyone that would be willing to test it out for him. And when we were starting this company, one of those village members, who was the first tester for our device, approached us. And I remember this was back in March. And she said, I would like to pay this forward because it's been such a big benefit in my life. And I remember we were visiting colleges down in California for my daughter at the time. And I got on a call from the Airbnb with this village member, and she was very emphatic that she wanted this to be propagated to other village members. And she said, well, I want to help propagate this and pay it forward because she's an orphan, she's never been married, doesn't have kids. So it's been a really big impact for her to be reassured that someone would know if something happened to her. And we said, well, okay, but we're not a nonprofit. We're a for-profit organization. So how is this going to work? It's not going to be a tax deductible charitable donation, as an example.
Right.
She's like, yeah, I don't care about that. So she said, I'm going to buy 170 sensors because I think there are about 170 village members in the Portland metro region that live by themselves. It's about a third of the membership here in the Portland metro region. And I would like to buy them sensors so that they can age in place. And so we've been fulfilling that gift,
Wow.
and we will throughout the year. But having that kind of validation and having, of course, having the monetary gift as well has been huge for us. But it's been remarkable to see the impact that it's having on those individuals who now we've never met. They've received these sensors from their village, and they call us and they tell us that how they love it, and they call us and they tell us I would like to buy this for my own family member that is not part of the village, and that's just very rewarding. So we felt very validated. But I think this is also where the sense of community is already obvious for a lot of the village to village movement members, and
Right.
this just augments that. So we're trying to help accelerate or enhance the relationships that already exist, rather than trying to build new ones.
Absolutely. I mean, what I love about the village to village movement is that it does allow people to remain in their home, but yet still live within a community. Because
Yeah,
one of the cons, one of the downsides of aging in place is often, as you say, isolation,
yeah,
because the old neighbors have moved away. Maybe the neighborhood has changed. Maybe they live way out in a rural countryside. They can't drive anymore, whatever. There's more and more isolation becomes an issue. Sometimes they can't even get, home health care because of where they live. So having that sense of community, even virtually, is amazing. I think that is the biggest plus or plug that you can promote with Hello Every Day. And it's an amazing benefit, really. I love that it's connected with the village to village. I mean, I could see it now being promoted in other villages across the
right.
country. And I was going to ask you, are you getting feedback from those 170? And it's wonderful to hear that you are, and that they want to also pay it forward now to others, not necessarily in a village. I think that says a lot about the product and the need for that kind of product.
Yeah.
I love that
Well,
it's easy, plug and play. It's plug and play. I love that.
well, I actually want to talk about that for a second because the plug and play aspect, when we first started, we originally designed this device to be operating on Wi-Fi. And then we said, okay, well, if you want access to the device, you need to download an app. And very early in our beta program, we realized both of those things are no. That's not going to work.
Right.
We actually had one device that we had installed down in Corvallis, which is about 100 miles from here. And we 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 saw that the sensor had gone offline one day, and we called the user and we said, "Hey, we realize your sensor's gone offline. Did it unplug?" And they said, "No, it's plugged in. It's got a light on it." And we said, "Well, do you have Wi-Fi?" And they said, "Yeah, we have Wi-Fi." Oh, but we did replace the modem recently. And we're like, "Oh, well."
Oh,
So we made the decision at that point that every device is going to have a cellular modem built in. So you never have to configure it for Wi-Fi. It automatically is able to talk to the cloud as soon as you plug it in. And then we quickly also realized no apps. So now when in order to receive notifications, all we need is a name and a phone number, and they get a text. And the notifications via text have proven to be very reliable and very user friendly. So it both of those things have completely alleviated the friction that comes with it, because friction, especially when you're dealing with older adults, means they are going to need to ask for help, and they
right.
don't like asking for help, right?
Right. I know.
Want to be able to do things on their own. So
I know.
as soon as you get them to ask for help, that's a no-no. So that's been one of the key learnings. I think the other piece of this is we often get people that talk to us that said, "Well, but I already have a camera in my mom's home." And I usually pause and I say, "How does she feel about it?" They say, "She hates it." I'm just like, "Well, why did you do that?" "Because I want her to be safe."
Right.
Well, so the need was always there, and we were trying to make up solutions the best we could. But I wouldn't want a camera pointed at me or even around my house, or so I'm not surprised that most people are I often hear that they often the camera will get turned away or they'll block it, etc. Because nobody wants to have that violation of privacy, not knowing where this information is going, etc. And so our device, I have one that is without a cover, Esther. So this is what our device looks like on the inside. So this is the human presence sensor, just basically looking for activity. This is the cellular modem. So this is what allows us to communicate to the cloud. And then this is a processor that's basically processing the data. So even though I am not moving around per se, this sensor is glowing green because even the small motions of my talking or my small hand movements is more than sufficient for it to know that I'm here. And so you can try to play a little game where you hold yourself really still to see if the sensor is not going to detect you. But even the smallest motions are going to be able to detect it. And then the other question that I often get is, "Well, where would you plug it in? Do you plug multiple sensors into the home?" And I tell them, no, all you need is one sensor, usually in a high traffic area like the kitchen, because that's where most people start their day and often will circle through towards the end of the day. And it's remarkable how much reassurance you get from just one sensor in one room, right? You get it.
How far does it go? How
Yeah, it's a great
far?
question. It's about 20 feet, so
Okay.
it'll cover in the room quite well. And that just allows people to feel like, well, then it's not going to be in the bedroom, it's not going to be in there, it's not in the bathroom or anything like that. And you're just getting the reassurance that they're doing okay.
And
So,
what happens if the power goes out?
yeah, it's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. So there's no battery in this by design. There are two major reasons for not having a battery in this. The first is most of the time when power goes out, it's usually a system-wide outage, and the cell tower that it's talking to is likely out as well. So that's not really going to help you. And
Okay.
then the second major reason is it from a safety perspective, having a battery in the device just poses a risk to fire, shipping, etc. Don't want that. So what happens instead is when the power goes out, it sends a message saying the sensor is no longer connected. So you get it, you know that the sensor is no longer connected. And again, our the point of this is to it's not to replace live communication.
Right.
It's to augment. So the goal here is to alert so you have the opportunity to call the person or visit so that you know that they're doing okay. And most of the time that that resulting call or visit is a positive interaction. It's not a negative interaction. The other um, couple of reasons why the sensor would alert you is if the temperature in the room is too high or too cold. So if it goes above 90 or if it goes below 50, it would send a message that says that the sensor is detecting too high a temperature or too low a temperature, or if there has been no activity for over 12 hours. So usually that's the other reason it would send a message. So
Okay, and when you talk about the cloud, are you talking about anything getting recorded onto a cloud?
it's a
How?
good question.
Yeah,
So all it's detecting is activity. So if I can share my screen, I can show you what that looks like.
sure,
We have I have a little PowerPoint that allows me to do that. So give me a second here.
sure.
But basically it is it's just showing you the so this is the hourly chart that allows you to see what the sensor is seeing. So the low bars are there's no activity, and then the high bars are there is activity. And so all it's showing you is that the user is active or the user is not active. And that's all there is to it. So it's just storing basically zeros and ones. The other thing that since we are on here, Esther, that I wanted to show as well is we have the ability to tailor depending on what the privacy needs are for the individual. Uh, we can tailor the way the sensor communicates out. So if they are very concerned about their privacy, or if they're sharing this with a village to village network group, or with a neighbor, for example, they may only want to send a message if there's actually something wrong. They may only want to send a message if there's been no activity or the sensor's not reporting or the temperature's unsafe. And so so maximum privacy is usually what they select. Or if they're sending it to a family member, then they may actually want just the access to the hourly data that I just shared with you. And
Mhm.
so that's the other way to do that. And then there's a medium privacy route as well, where they get a notification every day, but there's no access to the hourly data. So again, the autonomy of what gets shared is with the person that has the sensor, and they get to decide how it gets how it works. So um, that's again, we think a really important feature because we often find that if you try to push it to someone who doesn't want it, they will unplug it and they will sabotage it, and they have every right to. So we want to be invited into people's homes.
How many people can you put on the list to get a text?
Up to 5 people. And they can get, and you can change, you can have some that have high privacy and some that have medium privacy and some that have high reassurance. So you can put some friends on there and some family members, etc.
I love that. That was my next question. Does the owner, does the homeowner who has that plugged in, do they get a text as well?
They
Letting them
can,
know
yeah.
that a text was sent out? Okay.
Yeah, I often encourage them if they're willing to get their own sensor data at least for a while, so they
Hmm.
know what's going up,
Hmm.
and then they can tailor that appropriately. So
I
yeah,
love that.
yeah. Esther, what do you think as you think about your listeners and your viewers, what are some of the things that you hear about in terms of helping older adults age in place? How does this fit in with sort of what you've heard about?
Yeah, it fits in with the monitoring, which is
Mhm.
a huge issue with the family members, especially since what I hear is that so many family members live far away,
Hmm.
4+ hours away from mom and dad, and they can't get mom or dad to move closer or, and obviously they're living far away because of jobs. I mean, you go
Yep,
where the
sure.
work is.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if that will change if more and more people end up working at home. I am not sure how that, but right now, that's what I hear a lot of. So monitoring, how do I monitor, or how do I care for my elderly parent from afar, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, as we were talking about before, is the conversations. How do I
Right.
have these conversations? My mother was always very stubborn. Now I can't get her to do anything. Now it's like, so I call that the more so disease. However you are when you're younger, you're only more so when you're older. And it is difficult. I can understand that. And also, as you said, also the relationship that parent and child had initially, that doesn't often change as you get older. And so you're
Right.
fighting that as well. So I love the idea of coming after the monitoring issue, going at it from the viewpoint of independence and autonomy, because I agree with you. I think that is so, so important. And hopefully that is what is then carrying people over to safety. And you're right. I mean, as an OT, my first thing is safety. And
Right.
then I think, well, that gives you independence. Can't you see that? But you're absolutely right. I need to flip the script there. So I thank you for that. But those two issues are the biggest issues. And the third is adaptive equipment that doesn't look like adaptive equipment.
Hmm.
That's the next big thing because once you do get to the point where you need something, how do you make it not look like you need something? And that's a whole nother ball game. But those are the three main commentaries that I get from so many people. And I have several YouTube channels where I show people how to get up from a fall, how to get in and out of a bathtub, how to, do stairs on an icy, all of that kind of thing. And those types of videos bring me more hate comments than anything else. Not so much that they're hate, but you're just assuming every person over 60 is decrepit or old. And I'm like, no, I'm not assuming that. But that is the angle that they're coming at, they're taking it that way. So it's very interesting. I have to go back in and make changes um, and you're right. The way we speak to our seniors is important. The way we approach the problem is important. And I think part of the solution might be, and I don't know what you think, is including them in the decision process. Like don't just put a camera in mom's kitchen. I had a friend who did that, and the mother just kept throwing the towel over the camera. you know. So don't do that, but include them in that decision process. And that's why I love that they can also see what goes out and what it looks
Yeah.
like, and the idea of giving it to someone else and having them see it first before. So I think you guys are spot on as far as how to introduce the product. And I mean, I think it's extremely beneficial. As you said, that poor woman, what did you say, 3 days she was laying there before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Multiple
So,
days.
I mean, even 12 hours is
Right.
can be a very long time. So
Yeah.
I think it's so important to have that constant, communication. And I have to tell you on a personal note, as a widow, one of the things that I didn't realize that you lose as you live alone, and your mom might feel the same way as well, is that loss of touch. I mean, it's
Hmm.
one thing to communicate with another human virtually or even when you're talking with someone. But if you don't have that daily hug or that daily handhold or whatever, that sense of touch is really, I mean, I'm not saying that hello every day can touch you,
No,
but that is part of that whole isolation process.
yeah.
It's very interesting going from a relationship or any kind of relationship with living
Right.
with someone to being alone. So I hope your mother is doing well after all of that.
I appreciate you sharing so much. I want to talk about a few things that you called out, Esther. Um, One is when the kids are living further away. One of the biggest benefits that we see is when you've got multiple siblings checking in on an older adult.
Yes.
And they often have to play the telephone game of, "Oh, I can't reach mom. Have you talked to her?" And
Yeah.
and that just causes the stress levels to keep going up, right? What we find is when they all have access to the same information, that, oh, well, mom's active in the home. She probably is just busy or not answering a phone right now, etc. It just substantially lowers the temperature, and you're not playing that phone game all the time. So that we see that as one of the biggest benefits is when you have those multiple people. Um, I'm sorry to see here that you get the hate mail from
It's
the
okay.
folks. But I think there's something there, right? I think
Absolutely.
I think we are fundamentally, I hate to say this, but we're fundamentally an ageist society. So a lot of our older adults that I interact with often will tell me, well, I'm not old. I know a lot of people that are old, but I'm not old.
Yeah.
And it's because it's they feel like they're still 18 or 20 or 30 or
Yeah.
whatever, right? And they don't want to be attributed to being old. And
Right.
aging is such a complex and personal journey where you may have certain things that you're losing, like your flexibility and your mobility, or you may be losing your a little bit of your cognitive function. But it's such a nuanced journey, and if we sort of wipe everybody with the same brush,
Right.
that's very unfair, right? And so I think
Yeah.
that's a big part of this is how do we make sure that we have a nuanced conversation and make them feel seen in the first place.
Right.
So I suspect that the folks that are getting a lot of value from your videos really appreciate it, but then there are others that don't want to be put in the same category.
It's
And
true. Yeah, we get good and bad.
yeah,
Absolutely. It's emotional. Look,
it
aging
is.
is emotional.
Yeah,
And you don't know, it's impossible to put out one video and,
right,
have it touch everybody the same way. So obviously it's how they perceived it. And you're right. I mean, I have friends also, a good friend of mine, her father was 98 years old and he refused to go out on a community bus with other seniors to an event because he didn't want to be seen with with old people because he's not
right,
old. He's
right,
98.
right.
but but it's how you perceive it's emotional at the end of the day. But you're right. You're right. It's interesting. It's very interesting.
I think if we were as a society elevating older adults and
Yeah,
paying them the respect that they deserve, I suspect we would have less of that reaction.
I
Uh,
agree.
but if we're in the mindset that older adults have no useful purpose and therefore they should not be seen from or heard from, then I completely empathize. That's why we're getting that reaction. Nobody wants to identify with being old or being older. And for people that are my age, Esther, that are like, well, I'm never going to be like that. And I give them my own example, right? So a few years ago, my optometrist said, well, I think it's time for you to start considering bifocals because you're going to have struggle to start reading. And you can still do it now, but you're going to struggle with it. And he said, I remember his words clearly. He's like, look, I fell into the same trap, right? It's gonna suck for a while. It's gonna feel really awkward, but stick with it for 2 weeks and then it'll feel natural. And despite the fact that he gave his own personal example, I resisted for a year and a half. I was like, oh, I'm just gonna take my glasses off and I'm gonna read without my glasses and then I'm gonna put it back on. And then it got to a point where it was just getting obviously irritating. And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna follow his advice. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna just suck it up for a couple of weeks. And then it's now it's just magic. I don't
Right.
even feel that that is the case, right? But like it is insidious. Aging is something that is insidious and
Right.
happens to the despite our best efforts.
Right.
Uh, there's a great book that I know you've read. Called Being Mortal by Dr. Atul Gawande.
Right.
It's really been a thesis for us in our learning opportunities. But one of the things that Dr. Gawande talks about is how we are born with a tremendous amount of redundancy, right?
Mm.
We have, we're born with two lungs, two kidneys, uh, things that we don't need. But then almost as soon as we're born, that redundancies start to fade, right? And
Mm.
so we start to, our use case from a technology perspective, what we're able to do starts to shrink. I can't play tennis like I used to when I was in my 20s and 30s. But my goal has been, can I continue to play tennis as long as I can? I'll have to adapt my game. I'll have to change what I do, but I want to be able to play it as long as I can rather than play at the same level or the highest level that I could. And
Right.
I think just max doing as much as you can with what you have
Yes.
A, fills me with a lot of gratitude, but B, gives me the opportunity to keep doing what I love. And I
Yes.
think that's a really important metaphor for aging,
Yes.
and a reminder for ourselves that it happens to everybody.
Exactly. And I think being able to adapt to that change, if you have to wear different kinds of sneakers, if you have to wear a wrist, a band around your wrist to play that game, if you have to
Yeah.
play doubles instead of singles, whatever it is, continue as long as you possibly can to do what it is that you love. But maybe you just need a different tool to do it, or a different time set, or anything at all. But the point is to adjust it instead of abandoning it or just feeling that you can't do it anymore. I
Right.
mean, that's the whole OT mantra, is trying to, change the environment to fit the person, what they can do at the moment, whether it be via tools or methods or, procedures, whatever it is, however that person learns. So I agree with you. I applaud you in the fact that you were able to see that you could continue to do what you love to do. You just need to make a few adjustments. And you may have to make a few more as time goes by, but that's okay. That's okay.
Well,
Um,
I am going to have to make a lot of adjustments, Esther, a lot of adjustments. But that's the goal, right? Is
yeah,
you
that's
adapt
the
your
goal.
way, and I think that gives you it's a new sense of adventure too, right? It's a game that we play with ourselves of how can we continue to evolve and keep doing what we need to do, as long as we possibly can. So. That's exactly right.
Yeah,
There's another element that I wanted to pick up on, Esther, with something that we talked about a little bit earlier, which is how we communicate, right? I think as we age, not only is our world shrinking quite a bit, right? And the world shrink for a variety of reasons. We're not doing the same kind of activities anymore.
right.
That leads to isolation. Our peers are moving away, or they've passed on.
Hmm.
Uh, there's a whole variety of things that causes that. And so when you're interacting, things that are well intended can be grating, and especially verbal communication can often be grating. And I was having this conversation this morning with someone I met, and he was talking about how he checks in on his parents, and he starts the conversation with, "Okay, Dad, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Are you taking your meds okay, etc." And I pulled him aside a bit, and I said, "Well, but that's probably causing some stress there for him, because even though you're wanting to check in, you're making your dad feel like all he is the sum total of the medications that he's taking, or
Right.
how he's feeling physically." And I think that that's where the nonverbal communication can be so important, to make sure that we've got the ability to take away some of the friction associated with the check-in, versus just and being able to pivot to actually engaging as people. And on that note, I think one of the biggest things that I'm most grateful for my parents moving here to Lake Oswego was having the time with my dad in the same city where we were able to build memories in different places and
Yeah.
get to know each other as adults,
Yeah.
right? Without having to be sort of the caregiver and the role reversal, etc.
Right.
That can be such an important aspect. So the nonverbal communication and how you engage is a critical component of that doesn't nobody talks about it, and we don't actually learn this. So you've got to we're relearning each of all of these things on our own, but they happen to everybody. So I think it's
They
important
do.
to talk about it.
But not every adult child is able to, well, not every adult child has that relationship with their parent to be able to get to that point where
Yeah.
they can treat them or can see them as people versus parents. So I think you're very fortunate that, you have not only that cognitive ability, but that relationship with your parents. But so that changes everything of how you speak to that particular person. But at the same time, there's still that sense of caring for each other no matter what. Um, that's there. That I see a lot,
Sure.
more often than not. So I do I think that that's very good. I think your product is spot on. I think your message is spot on. I think that, are you guys building a community, like a Facebook community or any kind of online community that people can talk with each, or is that mean not even needed?
No, I think you're very astute, Esther. We think that community is a really important aspect of what we are building.
Mm-hmm.
And so we expect that we're going to launch a user group as we have enough users that are interacting with our devices.
Good.
But but we also, because our device is as subtle as it is, for many users, they like the fact that it disappears
Yeah,
in the background, right? That they're not actively engaging with it. And again, as we talked about, not everybody likes the notion of advertising that they need a device like this.
that's
So
true.
so I think we do have several village members that we have handed devices to that are just very emphatic advocates for us and want to have that kind of interaction. And so we're working through that, but we're trying to be sensitive to how to do this in with the right level of sensitivity, for people that want to engage with it.
Maybe it can be a community of aging tips,
Yeah.
versus the product itself.
But that's
Um,
also where people like you, I think, are so important, right? And working with um, people that are already doing that, and being part of this conversation is such an important aspect of how we feel like we need to engage with our prospective customers.
it is. It is. I was really, so surprised when, I mean, the whole purpose of creating the directory, the aging in place directory, was really just because I could see after years of writing in this niche how disjointed everyone was. Someone in Michigan is doing something, someone in California is doing something else, but no one was talking to each other of how
Right.
they were doing, what they were doing, and how this one could help this one, and so on. And it gave me the idea or the thought that this aging in place niche or just senior niche seems to be in the Model T era of development. Even though there's 10,000 plus people a day turning 65 until 2030, and then the next generation, So it's this I mean, the market is definitely there, but it's
Right.
not being fed. And I don't know if because ageism just seems to be embedded in the culture or society, I'm not sure. And as you said, we really don't give the respect and honor to seniors that I think other cultures do, or societies do. So I do hope that that changes at some point.
I have a hypothesis, Esther.
Tell me, tell
Uh,
me.
My hypothesis is that we think we can beat it. We think we
What?
can beat getting old.
Aging?
Yeah,
We
I
can
I
clone
I think
ourselves and put our
we
brains into a robot?
I think we are in
Yeah,
constant denial that this is going to ever happen to us, and we're being fed media from our media and from companies that, oh, we can make you look younger, we can make you feel younger, we can solve the aches and pains and
yeah,
all of that. And so I think we all feel like, oh yeah, well, by the time we get old, we're never going to need any of that, right?
yeah.
Uh, and so I'm some
It's
of
a good
this is tongue in cheek.
hypothesis.
It's a tongue in cheek, but I do think it goes with the ageist mindset.
Yeah,
Uh, Quite a bit, right? And the as an immigrant, I'll tell you, I love the American construct of we can do whatever we want. We can be whoever we want to be, and you can come here and you can build a life for yourself that you couldn't anywhere else. But at the same time, I think there's a I think we're trying to um, get past the laws of physics and biology too, at some in
yeah,
some cases. So,
yeah.
uh,
Well, wishful thinking, but you're right. I mean, along with accepting change
yeah,
is also accepting, life itself. You're right. But again, it's emotional, you
it
know,
is very emotional.
mm,
So
deal with
one
your own
one
mortality.
the one data point that constantly hounds me is if you ask people where they would want to live the remaining days in their life. They always tell you they want to live at home, right? But the United States is one of the only countries in the world where a big percentage, and I can't remember the exact percentage, but it's somewhere in between 60 and 80% of people die in hospitals. And the reason why they die in hospitals is because they don't have an advance directive. And the
Right.
reason they don't have an advance directive is because nobody wants to talk about it.
That's right.
So and medical professionals know this all day long, right? So if if you aren't willing to talk about it or plan in advance, then you might have things happen to you that you would never want for yourself.
Right.
And the purpose of Hello Every Day is for us to extend our ability to live at home as long as we can to you want to get this well ahead of time rather than trying to spend 10 times as much or 100 times as much to try and fix it once it's happened, right? And so
Exactly. If it
so
can, if it can even be fixed. I
that
mean,
again,
I
exactly.
I can't tell you. I mean, I worked in geriatric head injury, and I cannot tell you how many patients I saw who were now in a head injury unit because they tripped over a rug or just something silly and ridiculous. Or, as you say, they were left alone on the floor for weeks, or, I
Right.
mean, for days. And it just, they weren't able to get back, never able to get back home. Whereas that could have been prevented. It only took 1 second for that thing to happen, but it could have easily been prevented or what's the word? Mitigated, reduced to the point where they could at least have gotten better. But you're right. I mean, again, admitting that you need something, admitting that you need help, admitting that you cannot climb on those stairs anymore or fix the roof anymore or, paint your bedroom anymore. It's very difficult. It's difficult. And I agree with you. Need to have those conversations. They're difficult, but it's so important to have those conversations. And sometimes, a third party can help. A mediate, not that's a mediator, but some kind of counselor or something can help you through that process. there's not enough of that for sure. But again, everything costs money as well. And,
The
there's
resources
so many factors involved.
there are the resources are out there, but we have to talk about it,
Right?
right? I think education and talking about it is just such an important first step. So
Yeah.
I'm glad to have this opportunity, Esther, to have a
Oh,
conversation.
I can't thank you enough. I mean, I think this is so wonderful for my listeners and my readers. And you're right. I think we need to normalize,
Yeah.
the entire issue, or issues so that it's not so, foreign or weird or whatever anybody wants to call it. I can't thank you enough, Kabir. You are amazing. And I think when I think of, where I would love to be when I die, I think Lake Oswego would be one of those places. So you're very
Oh, you're so
fortunate.
kind, Esther. You're so kind. I really appreciate the time. I appreciate you taking giving us the opportunity to talk about this for your listeners.
Thank
Uh,
you. I cannot wait to do the unboxing for Hello Every Day.
oh, I'm so excited to hear that. I see how that goes. I will tell you, we've had 85-year-olds that we've shipped devices to, and they've taken it out of the box and plugged it in and said, that's it. And we actually had a woman who was a village member who's legally blind, so she can only see like 1 pixel.
Oh my
That's how
goodness.
she describes it. And she was able to take the device out and plug it in, and she said, "This is great. My mom should get one." And so,
Oh God. 85 and her mother should get one. I am
yeah.
telling you, seniors are caring for seniors. It's
Oh,
got that, yeah, the longevity economy is seniors are caring for seniors. Yeah.
that's
See,
exactly.
you've got double the audience.
Yeah, exactly. Esther, have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much.
You do too. Thank you so much, Kabir. Enjoy Oregon. Take care.
Thank you.